Welcome to Food, Wine, and Whiskey, a podcast about having fun conversations on tasty dishes, vinos, and spirits from around the world. Rob is your host. He is an avid home chef, WSET Level 2 award in wine, and a whiskey drinker and collector. Time to set the table. Here's Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode. Gonna have a great conversation today talking all things Italian, and I have two special guests on today's episode. Let me introduce Maria Palmer and Joseph. Joe, I don't want to mess up your last name. Constanzo. Both of you, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks
Appreciate you having us.
Absolutely. Well, let's start off the conversation because listeners are going, okay, who are these folks if they don't know who you are? Some may know who you are, and that's why they're listening to the episode. But if they don't know who you are, a quick introduction to you two. Maria, let's start with you. You and I kind of connected on social media. You've written a book about the journey through an Italian restaurant with your father, and that's kind of where we kind of became introduced. Tell us a little bit about that and about the book and kind of what drove you to write this book.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maria C. Palmer, and I'm an author, and I'm also a grant writer in the nonprofit field. The book that I wrote is called On the Rocks, the Primadona story, and I'm sitting here with my dad today because he's the subject of the book. And the book really chronicles his time in the restaurant business. It starts in the early 80s through the early 2000s, and it's really his rise to fame and success within that industry. At one point, he was America's top 10 Italian restaurant in the country, and we had celebrities and broadcasters and journalists and sports stars coming in and out of the little city suburb of McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. And it was at a time that we didn't have access to technology. So some of the larger restaurants at that point were in New York and Chicago and San Francisco. So to have a world-class restaurant in McKees Rocks was quite rare. And it follows the story through his sharp fall, which ended with a stint in federal prison for a federal grand jury investigation with somebody mentioning his name as a person of interest. So it's a very spicy, juicy story.
And this is a story you're telling from the perspective of a young girl. I mean, I'm looking at you now, you're 35, 40 years old. So back then, what were you, 8, 9?
Yeah. You're very kind of a little bit older than 35, but that's okay. We'll take it. So whenever my dad got into the restaurant, I was only 4 years old. So it's really from his perspective. It's all written in first person perspective. And I did have a writing partner on the project, my former AP English teacher in high school, Ruthie Dines Robbins, who was one of the original customers at the restaurant, a teacher of mine, and also grew up in McKees Rocks. Between the two of us and my dad, the three of us, we sort of went back and forth on this project for about 17 years. So it's quite nice to finally see it in the flesh.
Wow, that's awesome. And Joseph, always a chef, always into cooking? Did you do something before starting the restaurant? Because is this the only restaurant that you've had?
Yes. Never really into a lot of cooking, a lot of eating, that's for sure. I worked in the Postal Service before I got into the restaurant business, and I wanted really to put a bar, more or less, light food in a bar in that area. I was from the east end of the city, and I really didn't know anybody in the McKees Rocks area. The Rocks is a tough neighborhood, former steel town, and no one ever put good food there. And it really never was a destination spot, but it butted up against the city, and it was, on the Ohio River, about 10 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. So it was very close. I mean, the city, was right next to the rock. I mean, you could walk from the rocks to the city, so it really was Pittsburgh. But my cousin came over from Italy, and he knew how to cook. And he really didn't speak the language that well, and he was working for minimum wage. And I got into the bar area and had a liquor license, and I put a bar in. But just needing the fact that it was my cousin, and we ended up, putting a restaurant in, and it ended up. An unbelievable situation,
So the vision going into the project with the restaurant wasn't to have this fine dining, this, hey, let's really make an impact in, call it the United States, with the reputation that we're going to create for our food and our kind of ambiance in this restaurant. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to have a spot that people can come and enjoy some good food that your cousin could make. And you wanted to have some, adult beverages so everybody could, chat and visit and have a good time.
Yeah, my father owned a cocktail lounge in the shady side area of the city, which was an upscale area. And of course, in the East End, I never had that kind of money to get into that area. But I mean, I knew a tremendous amount of people in that area because I went to Central Catholic High School in the city. And it filtered in the whole city, so guys that you didn't even grow up with went to Central Catholic. So I knew a lot of people, but on the west end of the city and, into the rocks, I didn't really know anybody. So when I opened up the place, I had to make my own connections because I didn't have a cousin or didn't know anybody,
Yeah. And Maria, people are going to see the title of the book and think On the Rocks. You're talking about making a cocktail. This is a cocktail book. And the title, how did you ultimately decide on the title On the Rocks for the book? I mean, obviously it's a reference to the neighborhood.
Yeah, sure. So, and it certainly is. So, we originally wanted to do Rocks to Riches, but that didn't end up happening.
Yeah, it's Rocks to Riches and back again.
Yeah, Rocks to Riches and then back again.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Dad that just came up with On the Rocks.
Yeah.
And, it's such a great title because it's a double entendre. So obviously On the Rocks could mean a beverage served with ice, right? It could also mean a precarious, sticky situation.
Yep.
And it also, for our neighborhood, McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, the two towns that make up, quote unquote, the Rocks are Stowe Township and McKees Rocks. And they come together as these two joined communities, and they're known collectively in this area as the Rocks. So what we're finding is that by calling the book On the Rocks, not only are we getting people who are really interested, like yourself, Rob, in this culinary memoir, foodie, beverage kind of angle, but we're also getting a lot of people. Pittsburgh has a lot of folks that have since then moved out and found roots in other places like Florida, Texas, the South, California. And if they have connections to McKees Rocks, if they grew up in the Rocks, if they have connections to Pittsburgh, they're really gravitating towards this book because one of the opening chapters of this book is called The Rocks. And we do a flashback to the 1950s and 60s and what that neighborhood used to look like. And it was bustling with all of the steel mill towns and little shops and cobblestone streets. And just whenever you think of This Is America, that's what you would think of is McKees Rocks in the 50s and 60s. It was really quite a lovely place for people to lay their roots and to start living out the American dream. Now, since then, there's been a couple of iterations, and I wouldn't say that that's how people would describe it necessarily today, or even whenever my father was in business in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. But people love to have a memory of what once was. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why people are really gravitating towards the title.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the story behind it. Joseph, are you from Italy and immigrated here, or are you born here in the States?
I'm first generation American. My mother and dad were born in Italy. They did come over here when, separately, of course, when they were like, say, 8, 9 years old. So they never had an accent or anything to that effect. But, of course, they spoke Italian. And, so that's where we got our...
Sure. I mean, we could tell by the name, too. I'm just throwing
yes.
it out. But when you mentioned your cousin came over from Italy, and that's what made me ask the question, thinking if you had also at some point come over before him and
right.
Settled here. But no, that's great. Pittsburgh, is that always where you all have lived? And I want to let people know that if you haven't been to Pittsburgh, really should be a town that you visit at some point. I think it's a fantastic town, beautiful, and I'm trying to remember. I've been there once for about a 3-day period for a work trip, and I'm trying to remember what they call the historic district down there with all the shopping and the restaurants.
Well, there's a cultural district, and then the Golden Triangle. We have the Allegheny River, the Monongahela River, filtering into the Ohio River. We have more bridges than Paris.
Yeah.
And one of the most beautiful cities in America, San Francisco, has a bay, and it's beautiful. Pittsburgh has no bay, but it has all these mountains and rivers. It's absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to mention that people may not realize if you haven't looked it up, when you start talking about, East Coast and let's just say Pittsburgh, you talk about Philadelphia, New York, Boston, all these big towns on the East Coast. Well, funny enough, Pittsburgh's not that big a town. I mean,
right now it's probably about 350,000. When I was growing up, it was probably like 600, 700,000.
Was it that big back then?
Yeah, it was big. It was very big. But, we lost a lot of, people and what have you. And people moved into the suburbs. So, of course, that's not considered the inner city. So, like in the Rocks, it's not considered. It's like maybe there might have been 10,000 people. But, that doesn't,
okay. So
consider that's not the city of Pittsburgh.
So if you looked at Pittsburgh, like the metro area, like I'm here in Houston, and we're about 3.5 million in what we call Houston proper, and then we're about 7.5 million if you call the metroplex, which includes all the suburbs.
Western Pennsylvania, is about between 1.5 million and 2 million. All of Western Pennsylvania.
So it's still pretty good size.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about running for, I ran for Allegheny County Commissioner, and you're talking Allegheny County, almost 1.5 million people. There's many states that don't have 1.5 million people.
Right. So was Pittsburgh where your parents, Joe, grew up and settled?
Yeah,
and that's always been home.
That's where they settled. Yes. Yeah.
So that's been home for you the entire
forever,
time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew when you were going to open when you were going to open a restaurant, that was the place to do it. What was the story behind the neighborhood? You've touched on, and I've read some articles and things about the toughness of that neighborhood.
Yeah,
it wasn't a high income.
Really tough. A lot of people love to drink, love to fight, love to do drugs. I mean, it's a tough neighborhood. My father was adamant about me not going there. And, he's probably right. But it has a reputation as being one of the tougher neighborhoods, in all of Western Pennsylvania.
Is that where you all lived?
No. We all, we grew up in the city itself, in the neighborhood called Greenfield, which is, one of the neighborhoods of the city of Pittsburgh. And now, of course, when I got married, we moved out into the western area, and it wasn't the city. It was, Kraft and Ingram and then Robinson Township, which everything butts up against the rocks.
So I'm trying to get, what was your mindset in ultimately deciding this as a location? Was it, we could get a space that was a pretty good cost, the rent and everything wasn't going to be too high for us?
I would have never picked the rocks, but what happened was my wife was a flight attendant, and we got married in 74, so Maria didn't come till 81, but my wife took a couple gourmet cooking classes off of Chef Nick Fusco at the Hilton Hotel. And he was the executive chef at the Hilton. And she took a couple gourmet cooking classes off him. And, so she knew him. And he decided to open his own place. And it was in the rocks. That was where I was. I ended up buying the restaurant off of him. So we go down there, and it was slow, real slow. And he really couldn't make it. And then, push come to shove, the money was right, the price and all that, the liquor license. And he asked me, hey, mate, do you want to buy the place? And I was working in the post office. My wife was a flight attendant. So we had some money at that time. And so we said, okay, that's how it was. I mean, that's the way it happened. I'd have never picked the rocks.
So Maria, what's your memory? I mean, I'm interested in what your kind of memory is of how it evolved, how it changed. I don't know how, you were young, obviously, but your earliest memory of hanging out in this establishment, and then kind of a quick overview of how the restaurant changed and how it kind of, the impression it made on you as a young girl growing up in that community.
Sure. Those are great questions. So whenever my dad got into the restaurant, I was only 4 years old. And for the first year that he was there, he was still actually working at the post office. So he would work during the day there, and then he would work at nights at the restaurant. So sometimes my mom would help with deliveries. So we would go down, after school and we would sit there and we would get a chance to play in the space. So, some little kids, they're playing with plastic kitchens. We had a full kitchen down there. We would, pretend and sit at the bar, pretend like our teddy bears were getting drinks. And so it was a very magical space to grow up in. And then, as the business started evolving, I mean, I was too young to actually realize what that meant, but I could tell you that through my teachers, they would tell me, oh, I love going down to your dad's restaurant. It's such the spot. The food is so good. And then as I got older, I actually started to work there, and I started from the ground up, and I started as a bus person and then eventually became a server. And it was really probably like one of the best experiences in my life, because it taught me about working with people and working with the public. And that's something that you cannot get unless you have the hands-on experience to do so. So I got to see the height of the restaurant whenever it was at its busiest, whenever it was winning national and international awards. And it was awesome. It was really a very unique way to grow up, but a very wonderful way to grow up. I mean, not many people can say that they grew up in a family restaurant. It's a very unique experience, but I really do think that it's helped me and it's grounded me. And now, I can go to any dinner party and be seated anywhere and be okay. And I know friends of mine that are not able to do that,
right?
Because they were not, they're not accustomed to maybe getting to know new people or to talking to people, and that was just part of our upbringing. It's just what we did.
Well, and you mentioned family restaurant, and in today's world, those are the types of places my wife and I like to eat at. That's what whether we're traveling or here in the Houston area, we seek and find are the locally owned mom and pop type shops that, one, we want to support, but two, You can taste their passion. You can taste the love in the food. And in addition to that, they still create what I think you probably had was those regulars, that community restaurant, that neighborhood restaurant where people would go. You know, if you wanted to go, you know, say what was everybody doing, you'd be like, let's go to Primadona and go hang out. We'll see everybody that we want to see and chat a little bit, have some food, have a little drink.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for me, I think that has just deteriorated so much in today's food world. You know, in the world of food, you got all of these big restaurants that have, I mean, it's funny. A lot of people don't know. If you looked at one brand, you know, a national brand of restaurant, Olive Garden, they might be surprised to look at the parent company of that restaurant and all of the other chains that they own. And it's just an assembly line. It's a conveyor belt of food that's going out. There is no, you know, I mentioned the love and the passion going into the plate of food that you get to enjoy. There's none of that, in my opinion, anymore. Or you don't find it in a big restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. When I first got into the restaurant in 86, there was maybe 95% independent operators in Western Pennsylvania, you know, 5 or 10% franchise or corporate restaurants. By the time I left in like 2005, it was the opposite, you know, 90% corporate and franchise, 10%, you know, independent operators. And, you know, that it just detracts from the personality of the restaurant. People, you know, when you came into my restaurant, you saw the owner. He was thanking you. He was maybe giving you some appetizers on the house. You go to any corporate restaurant, walk in, spend $1,000, walk right out. Nobody says, "Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming down. You know, you spend so much money here. You know, here's a $10 gift certificate or 20." It ain't never happening. So, you know, so this is what we are into now. No, service is terrible now. Food is terrible now. I mean, you know, every veal or chicken Parmesan that we ever served, we breaded it to order. Well, we deboned the chicken breast. We breaded it to order. We pan fried it and then baked it. And of course, none of the Parmesans ever come in frozen like they do now, already breaded. And all they do is just take it out of a bag, throw it in the fryer and kick it out, throw a little cheese, sauce, and that's it. Yep. And it's, you could tell that, you know, it came from the fryer. So that's the difference. You know, people wanted what I had, but they never would do what I did. Right. I mean, I had a person all day just putting garlic bread in an oven or a salamander, and I could have just cut bread up and given it to them with butter. But I paid a person all night to do garlic bread. Yep. That's just the little things that you have to do if you want to be better than everybody. So,
Joseph, I'm curious. Why do you think that transition, that transformation in the restaurant world happened? Was it driven by the consumer? Because I used to think too, and I know this happened in your restaurant, and Maria, you jump in on this as well. People would come and it wasn't a 30-minute meal. It was an hour and a half or a 2-hour meal. Right. You came in to enjoy. And now I see restaurants who just want to flip tables, and I get it. That's how you become more profitable. But it stopped being about the people who are visiting your establishment and the experience that you're giving them, and it's just to put some food in their belly and get them on their way.
That's all it is. Yeah. People they're pushing you out, you know. And the COVID situation changed everything. So now we have no service. There's no help. You know, in the 20 years I was there. I closed the restaurant 2 days, okay? 2 days. One was the big storm of 93, okay? Friday and a Saturday, and it was like 28 inches of snow. And I had a gas leak one time. and I had to, get the
Sure.
that taken care of. But now you want to close? There's no problem. Just put a sign on. I mean, we're not putting it on social media. Well, there was no social media when I was there. But I mean, if you want to close, fine. Oh, we don't have any help. So, I mean, that's the excuse now. It's the excuse now.
Yeah.
I mean, you see throughout, what has happened in this country. Service is gone, food is gone. Now you go to a restaurant, 2 people, it's over $100, and you're getting more or less garbage food. Now you want really good food, a chain Capital Grill, which is really good food, and there were 6 of us a couple nights ago. Great food, great service. My steak was like $75, for a 22-ounce ribeye. I mean, we paid over $1,000 for 6 people. I mean, now come on. At Primadona, when I was there, 6 people, it was like maybe $150.
Yeah.
What I mean? Like, so this is the situation that you're in now. I mean, who can afford $1,000 for dinner?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the way it is.
And
if you want really good food now.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of friends. I'm an avid cook, and Italian food is one of my favorite things to do. But it's also a big reason, to your point, the cost of going out to eat now. And you mentioned just the food and the absorbent amount of cost it is just to have a good meal with you and your wife, let alone taking out your kids or something.
That's right.
But also, if you like a bottle of wine, what might be a $35, $40 bottle of wine at the wine shop is now all of a sudden at the restaurant a $140 bottle of wine.
That's the truth.
So, yeah, for that reason, I think you see a lot more people cooking at home and having what we call, the dinner parties, and we rotate and hang out with our friends because of the cost to go out.
If I picked up a bottle of wine for $15, I'd sell it for $30. I mean, that's 100% profit. I mean, that's great, but not today. You
Right.
pick up a bottle of wine for $15 and you're selling it for $80.
Right.
Or at least trying to.
And there is cost to you as the owner because you have to
Oh,
pay
no doubt about
somebody.
it.
You have to have glasses. You have to pour it. You have to wash those glasses. You have to.
That's right.
So there's a cost to that. A lot of people don't understand that, though, but there is. And I'm all about paying for good food, but I want an experience. I want a place that I go where I go, the ambiance, to your point about serving you, taking care of you, making you feel special when you visit my establishment. That's what I want to do. And I can give you an example. My son and I are here. My wife and daughter are out of town for the holiday. I took him to lunch Wednesday afternoon, and we went to a restaurant he hadn't been to, but I know the owner. And right when we walked in, Mary was like, "Hey, Rob, how are you doing?" And she came over and sat us down, and he's like, "Do you know her?" And I go, "Yeah, who is she?" I go, "She's the owner." And, she came and checked on us. She brought, my son's 22, but she brought us a little pour of whiskey after our meal and said, "Here, we just got this pick in we did a barrel pick in Kentucky. Have a little drink. You can tell me what you think." And you don't see that at most places anymore.
No way. That's what I did. People used to tell me, "Joe, I am a nobody, and you make me feel like a somebody."
That's awesome.
And I'm talking about, we're talking coming to my place, Jamie Lee Curtis, Joe Frazier, all the Steelers, Danny Aiello, or a steel worker. They all got treated the same. Great service, great food. And that's the way it was.
So Maria,
that's why,
yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, I mean, that's why it was successful.
Yeah.
I was there. I closed the restaurant every night for 20 years. I did not go to weddings, receptions, went to churches, but, for family and that. So, I mean, I was there. I slept in a booth more than I did in my own bed.
Yeah.
And I'm married now, of course.
Right.
And I'm still married close to 50 years. But all in all, though, the book itself, the only reason this took off, not the book, the restaurant, real quick, is because I needed the dining critic of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to give me a review. and he wasn't coming down. And there was no social media. There was no answering machines. You had to write him a letter, and or you did call, but if he didn't pick up, you didn't even get a message. Okay, so that was the reason it came about. After 2.5 years of begging this guy, letters, phone calls, he finally answered the phone, and I convinced him to come down, which he didn't want to do. Well, so without that, it would have never happened.
When you opened the restaurant, Joe, you said it was just going to be kind of this small bites kind of, and a bar type environment where people could come have a drink after work. Yeah. What prompted, or what, did it open up that way, Maria? And did it evolve and transform into this, restaurant with this reputation of fantastic food? And what was that evolution? How did it go from, hey, whose idea was it? Who was driving hey, we can make this, instead of just small bites, let's put some meals on the plate. Let's do family styles. That's what Italians do. We put out big plates of food. We all sit around. We enjoy it and share in company. What was that transformation?
Well, I think that the food was always there. It's just that the marketing piece had to catch up, right? So whenever he first came into this area, and to give people a picture of it, McKee's Rocks would not be a place, if you're from Pittsburgh or if you're not from Pittsburgh, this is not a destination that you'd be visiting. If anything, you'd be driving through to get to the city of Pittsburgh, probably with your windows up and your doors locked. But this is not a place where you'd be stopping. And so this was not a place that people were flocking to for fine dining, but it was a place that had a lot of nightlife. So I think originally what he kind of capitalized on was the fact that he's a people person, the fact that he's able to build relationships with the people. And so it was a local place to hang out. It was a bar. It did have a little bit of food, and the food was always good and consistent, but that's not what were making people come there. Originally, it was the bar crowd. And then really what changed it, and what the impetus to the rise was the fact that Mike Kalina, who was the reviewer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which is Pittsburgh's top newspaper at the time and still now, he came in, and he was also a syndicated columnist at the New York Daily News. He had written for the New York Times. He was a foodie before the Food Network. He had a cooking show. He had a lot of different things that were going on. And so he was able to bring the credibility with his stamp of approval. And then once that credibility came down, people didn't mind taking a chance from outside of the area to come and get good food. So now you're capitalizing on the local population, which you've already capitalized on, but you're also capitalizing on people that are outside of the area that want to give it a chance because this reviewer, who has a tremendous amount of credibility and clout, says that it's good. And my dad always says that really there can be no difference in the food if you have a 1-star review versus a 5-star review. The 5-star review dish, even though it's the same dish, it's going to taste better.
Yeah.
Subliminally, yeah.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. So
I went from a 4-fork review to a 5-fork review, and the food was exactly the same, but everybody thought the food was a lot better at 5. He only gave 16 5-fork reviews in the 15 years he was a dining critic. So, I got one of them. So, everybody. And
when people ask you what you changed to make it taste so much better, you just said it's a family secret. I can't tell you.
Yeah. The only bad thing is that I had a hard time talking to a lot of people because I was so doggone busy.
Yeah.
But it was good, though. I was there,
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned you dropped some names of some celebrities that made their way there. Did this become a place that they seeked out, or was it, they had a project or something going on in Pittsburgh and the reputation was, if you want good Italian food, here's where you go? Yeah,
well, we're so close to downtown Pittsburgh. Anybody that came into town, they'd ask the concierge, where's the best Italian restaurant in Western Pennsylvania. They'd say, right down the Ohio River. We're talking 5-7 minute cab ride. They'd come down, and that's how it all went. And then, of course, being the type of businessman I was, when somebody said, hey, the concierge at the Hilton recommended this, big celebrity, I'd get on and see the concierge and give him a $50 gift card, to come down and have dinner, him and his wife. So this is how this all worked, and I did some, a lot of advertising, but yeah, people came from Ohio, West Virginia, Erie, Pennsylvania. People came from distances, to come to the restaurant after it got so busy,
Maria, can you paint a picture for the listeners of what the restaurant was? When I think restaurants today, they've got 100 tables and all these different upstairs, downstairs, huge places. What was the paint a picture of what was the environment, what was the ambiance like that people would come and enjoy at the Primadona?
It was very cozy. So the Primadonna only had 83 seats, even though sometimes on the weekends we were doing 300 plus dinners. No reservations.
4 to 11.
4 to 11, only dinners. No reservations, closed on Sundays. People would start to, whenever it got really busy, people would start to line up at like 3 or 3:30 out the door. And like I had described before, those cobblestone streets in McKees Rocks never went away. So they're still there to this day, but people would be lined up on the sidewalk all the way down until we opened the doors. And whenever we opened the door, they would come in, they would sit down, and then, imagine, I would say it was not at all a bougie or a pretentious kind of ambiance. You felt like you were sitting in somebody's home. As the restaurant evolved, there were definitely more bells and whistles. He put into the main dining room a really beautiful mural of Italy that one of his waiters, actually, who's an artist, David Rigo, painted. He did some renovations to the bathrooms and, a bunch of other things, but kind of a very cozy environment. I always tell people, because you're 100% right about the whole experiential piece of the hospitality industry has gone. And what it used to feel like to me is like a Broadway production, where everybody, not in a pretentious way at all, it's just everybody knew who was involved with your table. They knew what they had to do to serve you, and it was a team environment. So somebody would come down, they would fill up your waters, they'd give you menus, somebody else would come and give the specials, and then they would take your order, and then it was just course after course was dropped and silverware was set, and people were paid attention to more than just making sure that you got the orders right, making sure that people felt like this was an experience to be had. And, my dad would constantly check into just to make sure that the service that we were delivering was on par with the service that he was envisioning. So it was really quite an experience. What's really neat to me is that I don't live in Pittsburgh anymore. I live outside of New York City, and the amount of people who they'll see the cover of the book, and at first they'll say, oh, well, what is this about? And I'll say, oh, it's about my dad, and he had this restaurant in Pittsburgh and everything. And it was during this time frame. And, it wasn't directly in the city of Pittsburgh. It was a little outside of Pittsburgh, and I'll be describing it. And then they'll remember that they went on a business trip to Pittsburgh at that time, or they went to a Pirate game or a Steeler game. And they'll remember going to the restaurant because of the description of my dad. People may or may not remember the food, and the food was really excellent. Obviously, that's how you get the awards and that's how you get the credibility. But what kind of keeps people coming back is the personality of the staff and the place and the heart of the place. And so that's what's really cool, because people either know they've been to the Primadonna or they know they haven't. But there's not really a gray area where they'll say, oh, I don't know if I ever went to that restaurant. You kind of know if you've been there,
Sure.
And I just had a situation like that. I did a signing at a neighborhood library, and the librarian's assistant was in Pittsburgh. She had worked for PNC, and then PNC was going to start closing branches all over New York City, and they were thinking of transferring staff to Pittsburgh. So they did a business trip to Pittsburgh. And one of the outings that they did was they went to the Primadona. Now, she didn't remember the name of the Primadona, but whenever she started looking at things, then she'd remember that she had been there because of my dad. And so that's what's really, really neat, is it's recognizable not only by name, but by spirit.
That's
and
awesome.
That's what I love.
And we've mentioned a few times about the neighborhood, and it was a tough neighborhood. It was a working class neighborhood. How did they embrace this? I gotta imagine with the success that the restaurant had, there was a sense of pride in the community that this was our spot. And when you talked about the bar scene, the club scene, a lot of times, you might have this thought in your mind that, things could get a little tough in the evenings at these types of places. Fights could break out. Joe, you mentioned that. I'm thinking, the Primadonna might have been a place that you went, hey, watch out, back off from there. That's our pride and joy right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a lot of bar business, and matter of fact, I had no bar business when it first opened because I put the bar in, and within the 2 years, I had the most bar business in the Rocks, and there was 86 licenses in the Rocks at that time. So, and then after I, went crazy with the food, I basically give the bar business back to everybody, but I still had so much bar business because people were waiting 2 hours.
Wow.
To eat, 2 hours wait. And so the bar was packed and people waited. They really did. And very few people complained because we were honest with people. When people came in, we said, hey, it's a 2 hour wait. And then they made the decision to stay, but we were always honest with them, So that was huge.
Yeah, and I think people appreciate that.
It was an experience. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. There's some things that are worth the wait, and it sounded like the experience and the food at Primadonna was absolutely worth the wait.
It was. Now, I wanted to tell you that originally I was going to say that Maria, on her book On the Rocks, it won a national award. It won the American Book Fest Award for the best narrative nonfiction book in America for the year 2023. Now, that's unbelievable because most people know me in Western Pennsylvania, but not outside. When the book came out August the 8th. On Amazon, it was the number one best-selling ebook on all of Amazon for culinary memoirs, ahead of Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential and Stanley Tucci's.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Hey, yes, I mean, and we're talking 2 weeks of that, ahead of those two guys.
Wow. Well done, Maria.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
Oh, thank you.
It's huge.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to. I want to talk about the book, and obviously the great success that you've had. I'm trying to make sure we create this, want for people to go out and get this book and read this book, and that's why I don't want to get too much into the ending of the story. And obviously, Joe, we're having the conversation, so we're all very glad and thankful that you're no longer incarcerated, but that's part of the story, and that was part of your journey in this all kind of coming together. And I don't want to give that part of it away because I think that's a happy ending that should be enjoyed and read in the book for sure. No, unless you all want to talk a little bit about that, that's completely up to you all.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I think that kind of what I'll say on this is the reason why we wanted to write this story is because everything at this point in time, we are in a technology age and everything is made public. And so whenever you used to Google my dad's name, things came up, but really somebody's worst mistake in life should not be how they're remembered. He did so many wonderful things for the community, transformed the restaurant industry. And so we really just wanted to tell people the full story of not denying that anything happened, because it did, but explaining the why behind why it happened. And I think that On the Rocks, the Primadonna story really does a great job in painting the picture of how things got to be the way that they did. And, although the Primadonna story did not end happily, or, we would rather it had ended a little differently, it's the learnings and it's how you come out of those really tough situations. And my dad always tells me that whenever you go through something hard, it's persisting through. And, it's not necessarily the smartest person in the room that's the most successful. It's the person that hangs on and has the most resiliency. So I think whenever people read this story, it has a human element that everybody will be able to relate to. It has pieces of love and redemption. And, it's very short chapters, 3 to 5 pages. It's a very quick dialogue heavy read. We do have a shopping agreement at this point for film and TV rights. So we're hoping that it sells to a studio somewhat soon, and, maybe people can see it on the screen. But even if they can't, I think that the story does do a good job of painting the full story, both the good and the bad.
Yeah, I think that's great. And just understanding, the story for you all personally, but also I think the world of food is huge today, and getting to kind of go back in time and experience what eating at those types of restaurants were back then versus a lot of the times the experience you get today. I think that's part of the journey as well, to see how well your dad did and just really, I'll say, loving, not just valuing, but actually loving the consumers, the patrons who came in to enjoy your space there.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, where can they find the book? Obviously, we mentioned Amazon. Where can they follow you if they need to on social media and see what's going on, or your dad? Give us some shout outs.
We got a lot going on. So, my website is www.maria, Palmer, PALMER.com. And on that website, all the places that you can get the book, as you mentioned, Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble. Most local bookstores either carry the book at this point, or they're able to order the book at this point. And we also have lots and lots of events coming up. So we do, for our friends, I know that you're in Texas, Rob. So for any of our friends that are outside of the greater Pittsburgh or New York City metropolis, December 14th, we are having a virtual event with the Parkinson's Foundation of Western Pennsylvania. If you go under my events tab, you can sign up for that. That's a free event, but you can also help to support them, and you can buy a book, which will support their organization, which is a really nice thing to do. If you're in the Pittsburgh metro or you're in the New York City metro, this Saturday, actually tomorrow, we will be having an event. We'll be having a signing at the Barnes & Noble in Greensburg, PA. We'll be there from 1 to 3. We have several things kind of coming up. We have a really cool thing that I just announced today. We're doing a cooking book. So I've done lots of cooking classes before. I've also done lots of book talks. Last month, we kind of married those two things in New Jersey, and we did a cook and book class where the first part of the class was a hands-on cooking class. We made ricotta gnocchi, Italian marinara sauce, and then the second part of the class, we sat down for dinner and had a book discussion, an open Q&A, and a book signing. So we're going to be replicating that right here in Pittsburgh on January the 20th. from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. All of the information is on my website and my social media. You can follow along at Joe Constanzo. That's JoeCostanzo, Primadonna, Primadonna. And we're on Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. So
awesome.
Please do follow along on our journey. And, if you do pick up the book and if you like the book, please give it a review on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, even just saying something like great book and giving it a hearty number of stars. It helps authors so much.
Yeah.
Huge help. So thank you.
And I love the event that you're doing, that, being able to sit down after, have a discussion with questions. That's awesome. I'm guessing, Joe, the one in Pittsburgh coming up, be hard to keep you away from that one?
Right, exactly.
You'll be there, I'm sure?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you both for coming on. Joe, I think it was great. I think you brought up a very good point, Maria. A lot of people, when they search, they always find the negative thing about somebody, but getting an opportunity to visit with both of you and Joe, and getting to see your love of people, your love of life, and seeing who you really are as a person is something I really enjoyed being able to do today.
Thanks so much, Rob. I really appreciate it. And appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. It was a fun conversation. And let me ask you this, finishing out, if there's a Italian restaurant in Pittsburgh, somebody's coming up to Pittsburgh, the Primadonna's not there, is there one of you all would recommend today that kind of falls into the profile you guys enjoy? Yeah,
I like Scolio's, which is in the Foster Plaza in the Green Tree neighborhood of the city of Pittsburgh. And I actually like, this is out past the airport, it's called Vesuvio's.
Okay.
And again, both of them are really good food, and Vesuvio's has homemade pasta. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Maria, you're agreeing.
Yeah, I'm going to put in a second vote for Vesuvio's.
Okay.
I love it. It is a little bit of a far drive from Pittsburgh proper, but it is worth it. And the food is so good. It's very, very reasonably priced.
Yeah, real unpretentious place.
Yes. Yeah. I think actually maybe priced too low if the owners are listening. But the food is dynamic. They homemade all their own bread. Their pasta's all homemade. I would say, it's on par with the quality of food is on par with New York City places. That's for awesome. Sure.
And it's in Beaver County. See, Pittsburgh's in Allegheny.
Okay.
So Allegheny's the big county here in Western Pennsylvania. And it's in Beaver, which is right next, butts up against Allegheny.
Yeah, we got to let the listeners know, if the Primadonna's not there anymore, where would Joe and Maria eat? We got to get those recommendations. So when we come to Pittsburgh, we're eating at that best spot in town.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or just come over the weekend of January 20th, and then you can get good old.
Is there a ceiling, a head count on that event?
Yeah, it's going to max out at 50, and
50.
I do think that we will probably sell out.
So get on there and sign up.
Yeah, and it is actually possible. This is our first one in Pittsburgh. I just did my first one in New Jersey, like I said, a couple of weeks ago. People were already hounding me not even 20 minutes after I got to my house. What are we going to do next? What's on your menu? I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got home. I can't even think about this. But I do see that this is the evolution of where this is going, because with bookstores, you have a timeline, right?
Yeah.
With Cook and Book, everybody has to continue to eat or you die.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
There is a captive audience for that. And it does, I think that people really did enjoy it. It's a BYO, so you can bring wine, whiskey, whatever it is that you like to drink, water.
That's awesome.
It's really fun time.
Sounds like a national tour, and Houston might be on the list.
Yeah,
all right.
It might happen.
Yeah.
When we launched the book at the Heinz History Center, which is a huge museum here in Western Pennsylvania. It's on par. It has a relationship with the Smithsonian, and it's huge. It's in downtown Pittsburgh. But we had 500, over 500 people come to the book launch. And Heinz History Center said since they've been open, they never had that many people for a book signing. Never.
That's awesome.
So that tells you a little bit. And I've been out of business for 20 years. So it's not like I just got out of business.
Yeah.
So that tells you something about what people, thought about the restaurant.
And you.
And myself. Yeah. I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it was. And when I left, I was so busy. It wasn't like we didn't have any business. I was busy from 1988 to 2005, packed.
Yeah.
Every night.
Well, Joe, I'm glad you're still in the community there, that they still get to enjoy and visit and see you around. That's great that you're still in the community. I know a lot of times these stories end and somebody might move away. I'm glad you haven't. And Pittsburgh, you sound like I'm going to say it, you're a treasure there, man. And they appreciate you and enjoy you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So, well, if you don't have the book yet, hopefully this conversation is going to pique your interest quite a bit and get you to go out, get this book, enjoy it, and then find Maria on her website, send her a message, leave a review, but send her a message out. Let her know how much you enjoyed the book. I'm sure she'll appreciate that as well. Guys, any last words before we close it out here?
No. Books on the rocks.
On the rocks. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.